It shows we're live, Graham.
I've got the thumbs up. Thank you, Mike. Andrea, welcome. Floor is yours.
Thank you, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for having me. My name's Andrea Twaddle, and I'm just a resident in Cambridge. So I really appreciate the opportunity to attend and to speak with you today. We are all here with a shared vision of maintaining the Waipa as this amazing place to live, to work, to play. And I certainly commend this council for having a look at making sure that you've got infrastructure in place to maintain active transport in and around our towns, and also to look to the future and how we make sure that we maintain, that we plan, that we can maintain, and we keep developing that infrastructure. So, you know, I'm certainly on that journey with you. But I do have some significant concerns about the Hamilton Road Cycleway project. In my day job, I've been a lawyer for quite some time, and I'm involved in local government and resource management work. So when the first consultation came out around this project in November last year, I've got to say I was really surprised to learn that there would be a shared pathway plus a cycleway plus traffic lights, plus cul-de-sacs, all going on with less than a month to engage with the public, and that has now gone out to tender, and council today are being asked to make a decision on that. That is a very rapid move, and based on very little information to engage with public. My concern around that led me to ask some questions about, well, have I missed something? Has there been some sort of resident engagement that I haven't been aware of? Which is where I started asking some questions. And the reality is that no, I hadn't missed anything. That was the first that residents had an opportunity to know about this project. Essentially, from my perspective, and look, I don't pretend to represent any other residents, which is part of my concern. There are very few residents who actually understand what is being proposed, and the decision that you're being asked to make today is that the project doesn't actually reflect your strategic priorities. And by that, I'm not suggesting that you don't have priorities in terms of ensuring that you've got appropriate infrastructure in place, but the actual spend on where there is a need in and around the Waipa, and an identified need at that. There is a scale of this project that is disproportionate to the needs of Cambridge, and it's not underpinned by community consultation. So if I look at council's consultation, I can only describe that as best, as defective. And I don't mean any disrespect to this council, but I want to take you through some of your obligations in terms of actually the decision-making role that you have, because I'm really concerned that what's going to happen is people will realise this is a decision made, it will get into the public arena and people will say, how did this happen? And it will derail all of the good work that you're actually doing towards maintaining safe ways for people to get in and around our streets. Those concerns include the lack of transparency about the actual true cost of this project in its entirety. Nobody has been able to put a figure around that, only for this little block that's being proposed now. What happens when that is actually extended out as it's proposed to the new subdivisions? How is that actually going to be costed when you've also got to take into account the protected trees along that space, those huge, beautiful big trees which are the gateway in, and making sure that these works don't interfere with those, for example? How does it actually play out in the costings? Has that been considered? And is this the best place for council expenditure right now? In terms of those local government obligations, I just want to pause on those for a minute, because there is an obligation to look at the economic and the environmental effects of the decisions that you're making. In terms of the Local Government Act, you're required to make decisions that are assessing all reasonable practical options, assess the advantages and disadvantages of projects. And a number of the proposals in this Hamilton Road Cycle project, conscious that I'm flicking in here, and I've got a power button that keeps the coming up. We'll try. Otherwise, I'll try to speak louder. Is that there aren't alternatives that have been considered. This is just being proposed to you as, here's what we'd like to do, and we'd like to make a decision on that. So if I look at council consultation, I asked for a copy of submissions because I was interested. I wanted to actually understand what the community engagement was. And provided, and I think you all got a copy. Thank you. Thank you, Dawn. Can you all hear me now? By way of example, I asked for those submissions, and within those there were referred 9 other submissions. Well, I'm aware that one of those submissions was on behalf of Streets for People, and one of those submissions was on behalf of the Tiaramuri River Cycle Charitable Trust. So those are just simply hidden in amongst all other submissions. Now, what those submissions asked for was, what is the need and why is the priority of spending here, rather than based on the data that you've had for a number of years in the Be Bold survey and the Safe Streets survey? Why has that work not been advanced, but you're spending money here for a cycleway and a shared pathway that goes to new subdivisions that will not come online for some time, that is proposing traffic lights for traffic volumes that don't exist for 20 years? Is that really where you want to be prioritising your money, particularly in an environment in COVID-19, which is uncertain for all of us? This council has made decisions about rates and the time given for people to pay their rates. Are you really that sure that you can keep bringing infrastructure projects forward in that environment? What I also know about those submissions is that despite a passing discussion that Ms Palmer from the Charitable Trust had with your Chief Executive, no one went back to her to provide her with information or engage with the Trust about what the need was. So I'm left questioning, well, if you've got that expertise right here, why is it not being used and why is it not informing your decisions? Council's report also asserts cycling behaviour as the basis for some of the recommendations in the report. And again, I question why that information isn't actually supported by going to the people who have the expertise both locally and nationally on that information. In terms of the project itself, one of the concerns I have is the information that is before you, which is why I've kept asking questions. I simply want to make sure that around this table, you're able to make informed decisions. But when I went to a meeting last December, and I appreciate your invitation to that, Councillor Coles, one of the things that surprised me was the assertion that developers were in support, had been involved in the design and the planning of the cycleway alongside the shared pathway. Now I spoke with Matt Smith this morning, and I presume that is the developer that is being referred to in terms of being on board with the project. He said no council staff has spoken with him about the design of this project. So I'm really concerned about what the information and the veracity of that information being presented to this council is. In terms of the broader decisions, I'm also really concerned, and I appreciate your time, about the fact that council staff are asserting that you don't have to take into account your district planning documents and making decisions here. There is no time that this council or staff have gone to residents and asked whether they think that traffic lights in the middle of the gateway into Cambridge are consistent with the amenity and the character of our area within Cambridge. Now that is a significant change, and no one has asked about that, not once. So you're being asked to introduce that at a significant cost, and the only justification for that again is 20 years' time, the traffic volumes will change, instead of actually having an appropriate pedestrian crossing which is fit for use. While the report does set out the other rationale for why the traffic lights or signal crossing is preferred, it doesn't note the other things that are identified in NZTA documents in terms of planning around pedestrians and crossings. Some of those things are that the delay is actually more frustrating to pedestrians, and they take it upon their own to just simply cross the road, that when those signal crossings don't have the volume of traffic that we don't have presently, but we're expecting in potentially 20 years' time, people simply start ignoring them, which creates a greater traffic danger. None of that has been assessed in the information that's being provided to you. In terms of the broader council infrastructure, yep, I absolutely am. I'm aware that this is a significant amount of money that you're being asked to spend, and it may not be in the scheme of the entire budget, but it certainly is for residents. You're being asked to put in a shared pathway and a cycleway where there is no identified need. There isn't then a connection between safe streets in and around Cambridge town and getting people into town. There isn't, and I appreciate you've just discussed the mobility project, but that doesn't have guaranteed council funding yet. And it doesn't actually build on all of the information that you've had for some time. My concern is that you're going to make a decision that will hit the public arena and will actually undermine that work that you've done. So I don't want that. My suggestion to you is that you actually go back and do the consultation properly. You don't have to make a decision in this meeting. You can engage on those aspects of the public where the public haven't had an opportunity to have their say. And I really strongly encourage you to do that so that you take them with you on this journey rather than having them stand against you when they realise the expenditure that they haven't had a part of being consulted on.
Right. Are there any pressing questions that you need to answer, Brian or Eric, or can we cover them in the tab number 4 agenda item, which we're about to go into? Brian?
I think they'll all be answered in the report and in any questions that the councillors have on going through that report.
Okay, who's leading that now? Eric, or are you together, Brian, or Eric doing that? Okay.
Eric will do it, but I'll certainly be here to answer other questions as well.
We're going, yeah. So we're going to move back to the agenda proper now, and we're sitting at page 34. The Hamilton Road Transport Corridor Improvements, feedback from community engagement and program of delivery. Floor is yours, Eric.
Thank you, Chair and next members, and thanks, Andrew, for your thoughts on the project. So this project, where we're at, we've done a design. It's gone through a safety audit. It's gone through public consultation. In parallel to that work, we've gone through the procurement exercise, and we're in the process of evaluating tenders as we speak. We wish to construct this project this financial year. One of the reasons that we're planning to build it when we are is, and it flows on from a point Andrew made, was that we have a lot of really important trees on this corridor, and we've now designed specifically addresses all matters in relation to trees. So where we excavate around trees, we do it by hydrovacking as opposed to a digger, and there's arborist supervision of the works. So and in addition to that, there's various contractual requirements on the contractor to protect trees. So you can rest assured that the trees have been well looked after, and it includes some of the protected trees on private property as it affects the footpath. The other thing in terms of the design, to address one of the points from Andrew, was so we are future-proofing our design. It's common in roading projects to design for traffic in the future. So it's actually uncommon not to do that. Actually, I've never heard of it not being done. So a classic example would be the previous discussion about the high-level bridge. That's 115 years old. So, you know, the people that built it in 2 lanes where they could have built it a single lane. So I guess I'm saying, yes, we have future-proofed our design, but there's a good reason for it, and it's standard practice. And the future-proofing we've had to do is actually quite minimal to cater for protected growths. So the key part of this paper is the feedback from the consultation. So you've got the information here, but overall, the majority of residents that provided feedback supported the creation of the cul-de-sacs. So that was really pleasing to see. However, there were people who disagreed with it. And there was a common theme, is that a lot of people were worried about the traffic redistribution on the likes of Queen Street, Vogel Street, Bryce Street and Clare Street. Now that's a valid concern. Technically, those roads can handle the extra traffic because you're talking literally hundreds of vehicles a day. However, the perception from the residents and the speed of change can be an issue for them. So we realise that. So so what we looked at is options how we can deal with the that feedback. So we looked at 3 different options. One is we carry on as we are, but I think that has a huge risk that we don't take the community on board with us, that we need goodwill, we need to talk and listen and adapt. Option 2 talks about still having the cul-de-sac, but having exit legs only on the cul-de-sacs. And that goes some way in addressing the traffic redistribution that people are worried about. It goes part way to dealing with some of the concerns from the dairy on Grey Street, not the whole way. So that's an option 2 we looked at. And option 3 is we'll just extend the existing shared path that extends from the White Church to Grey Street now. Just extend that level of service along the project length. But there's still a significant cost in doing that, and that has no future proofing. So that has no scope to cater for the desired flows of cycling in particular as the town grows and as people want to bike more. And then if we do that, we will get feedback from the rest home or the retirement village users that there's going to be conflict because you've got different speeds. You've got people walking slowly, you've got kids on bikes and stuff. So that we see that conflict as a real problem. So we're promoting that we proceed with option 2. And on the back of my report, there's a concept plan that shows how that would work. And we've designed it in such a way that we could reverse it and retain the full cul-de-sac capacity in the future, subject to further consultation. And I think as traffic behaviour changes, people get used to it, we get more cyclists on these routes, then we could consider closing those exit legs.
Yeah, Andrea was critical of us not consulting, but you've just given us an outline of all those things that you've taken into consideration in the submissions. To me, that indicates that you've taken on board what those people want to say. Secondly, Andrea was critical of the money, and is council making good value, and can we afford to do that? But I understand we're getting something in excess of $800,000 from NZTA to fund this project. Can you confirm that, please?
Yes, this work is eligible for a 51% subsidy, and that's in the order of $800,000. That'll depend on the final cost.
Phil.
And that's within this financial year.
Gotcha, Mike.
Correct. Yes, it is, Phil. Yeah.
And if it's not finished in this financial year, will that jeopardise that funding? Or?
Yeah, I'll let Brian answer that question.
Yep, so the Transport Agency's funding for our general roading program is on a 3-year block fund. So at the end of that 3-year block fund, any money that we haven't spent is automatically withdrawn, and we have to start spending the next 3-year block of funding. So at this stage, we've got that funding guaranteed. Come July, we have no guarantee of the level of funding. And in fact, we've actually had the Transport Agency come to us and say, because of the demand across the whole country, that our funding request for the next 3 years could indeed be scaled back. So we don't have guaranteed beyond 30th of June.
Mike, you've got a question, I think. You're on mute, Mike.
Sorry, a couple of questions for Brian through the chair. One is, with the changes that have been made through the submissions, particularly around the sort of one weighing of Grey Street at each side there, I'm assuming there's going to be some extra costs there. So that's one thing. Can we confirm that that's probably the case? The other thing is, if this goes beyond the 1.7 odd million, will NZTA pick up still 51% of the total cost, or are they capped at what they said they would give us? So we can answer that, and I've just got one more question. Brian.
Yep, so at this stage we believe that the changes that we've made as a result of the consultation will fit within the budget. So we don't believe there'll be an issue, but if it does go above that, then we'll have to look at what work we prune back to stay within the budget.
Right, thank you for that. And my second question is, and it's and I hear the future-proof argument, and I think it's a very good one when we're designing. However, the traffic lights, which are quite a significant cost in this project, are we definite about the need for those now? Because I mean, they obviously could be retrofitted after one tests, you know, how an alternative would be looked at. Just like your comments on that, please.
Yeah, so the reasons for traffic signals are spelled out in the paper. So at nearly 11,000 vehicles a day and the types of traffic that is on that route, it already well qualifies for this type of crossing, a signalised crossing. So you think about it, at the moment, teachers must be at that pedestrian crossing morning and afternoon to monitor young children crossing it, because there's no guarantee that children are going to judge the speed of traffic or that traffic's going to stop. So just the same way as we put traffic signals on Victoria Street near Williamson Street, it's exactly the same reason. We are after a modern and safe crossing, and traffic signals are definitely the way to go for this location. Yeah, as I mentioned in the paper, there is still that risk that a child will push the button and then not wait for the lights to turn red and for traffic to stop. There is still that risk that a driver may not see the red signal and may not stop, but that risk is actually lower on a signalised crossing than it is with a current zebra crossing.
But Brian, the one that we put on Victoria Street, which was 1B for the safe crossing to the schools, worked absolutely marvellously, has it not?
It has worked well, yes. Yep.
Mike, did you have a supplementary, or are you okay with that?
Not happy with that. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Philip?
So, and just two quick questions, back with the Victoria Road traffic lights. What's the traffic numbers there compared to Hamilton Road? It's 11,000, I think you said, for Hamilton Road.
Yep, so it would be quite similar on Victoria Street. I can't tell you off the top of my head. It might be 10, it might be 12,000.
Okay, I thought it might be significantly higher than that. And so a question I want to ask with regards to the Hamilton Road project, I've asked a staff member before, and would there be money in this budget to put a crossing in over Queen Street from the Grey Street area? Because that was some of the concerns from residents about having a safe crossing, having crossings leading back into town. Part of this project, would there be a little bit of extra money available in the budget to put a crossing across, say, Queen Street? Would you be able to answer that, please?
At this stage, we don't think so, but you recall from the previous discussion about the urban mobility business case that Grey Street will be, high on the priority list for the next financial year, assuming that the urban mobility work is all funded.
Any of the Zoomers have any more questions? Any more in the chamber?
Chairman,
Your Worship?
it's just a comment, and I hear Andrea's concerns, I suppose, in terms of the scale of this project in terms of cycleway. It looks like it's out of character for what we've been building. But when you consider just what the growth is happening around, well, in the whole district, but Cambridge in particular, and we look at C2 and C3 and the scale of the development that's happening there, it's like all of our projects, we've got a plan for the future, and this construction is going to last well out to the predicted time frame. So, you know, whether we're building swimming pools or roads or bridges, it's our, I suppose, need to actually predict, or hope to try and predict, what the use is going to be for the life of that asset. And it's never easier than putting it in now. And if we've got the funding available, look, I support this project. I think it'll show a lead of how we do actually want to promote cycling and walking through our towns. So look, I understand the concerns and the scale of it, but realistically, the speed in which Cambridge is growing, it's outstripping all of the population projections and the amount of traffic on the road there. So I think we've really just got to move ahead.
Roger, have you got your hand up? And
yeah,
Marcus, thank you.
Yeah, I have indeed. Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to support the comments in terms of the predicted growth and when, in fact, the infrastructure in that transportation network will be required. I mean, we're talking about C2 and C3, and in our plan, in the district plan, those areas are anticipated to meet the demand up to 2035. Now, you know, we're 2021 now, and that's only 14 years ahead. So that time frame is getting shorter and shorter as every new year passes. So I support the planning of this cycling network to be in place in that time frame.
Thank you, Roger. Marcus, please.
Yeah, I think it's great plans, and I'm really envious that we don't have anything like this happening over in Tiaramuri. But you know, we have to be bold about new things, and Cambridge is growing at quite a rate, and we need to encourage alternative forms of transport. And yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea and something we should be able to be pretty proud of and see what happens.
Yeah, thanks very much. We've had a pretty good go at this. Oh, Liz, sorry.
And Andrew next year. Look, my sentiments are similar to everybody else's, but I just take heed around making sure that we're bringing our community with us on this project. And not everyone understands the facts and the figures around what our predicted growth is, or even necessarily, you know, what the growth is looking like in the next few years. Which astounds me, that not everyone is as connected as, and we're living and breathing this, of course, every week. So I guess I just put that challenge out there. We need to connect with our community on this and make sure that our communications are really good, better than good, excellent. And I think making sure that our schools in particular understand the reasons why we're doing this, but also our community at large, our elderly. You know, we want more people to cycle and to walk and to ride. But I take heed of some of the comments and about making sure that we do this right, and our communications going forward bring everyone along with us.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and I endorse what Liz has said as well. There's actually a number of things Andrew has brought up that I'd like some comment from staff on. I guess the first one is the consultation has been somewhat, well, no, that's not quite true. The project, in my consideration, possibly has been conceived and designed and presented quickly, and there are potentially a number of reasons for that. I'm not going to try and blame COVID again because it gets to blame for everything. But you know, the funding issue is a major consideration that we have to take into consider. You know, we have to consider. And the thing is, we cannot use that funding anywhere else in the time frame that we have available. So that's a given. However, having said that, I think we have to take note of the fact, and you know, again, part of our considerations that this is possibly not compliant, I guess, with our community's expectations of where the cycling upgrades would have liked to have taken place. And the other thing is, are we creating a gold standard that we're going to struggle to comply with in future development, cycling around the place? Is this going to stick out like a sore thumb with the rest of Cambridge's cycling amenities in the future? I mean, hopefully not. So, but I'd like a comment on those, if I may, please.
Just before, Brian, just before you answer that, I can remember the Ferrari when we were putting the cycling out to Carapero, a 3-metre concrete strip out there. I tell you what, it's been an absolute stunner. It's been an absolute story, Brian.
Yeah, so this project was obviously included in the 2018-21 LTP, and it was all around managing the growth in Cambridge, and obviously the discussions we've had with developers. The Tiawa Life Care Village are really keen to see this path go in because they want the path to extend across the front of their property and allow their residents to get into it. Chartwell Developments, who are the next subdivision along before the town belt, they're really keen as well and have vested land and everything to allow it to proceed as well, and are sort of fully bought into this separation of pedestrians and cyclists. We heard mention of Matt Smith. Matt Smith typically doesn't go to the meetings that are where we talk about the detailed design, but all his designers and advisors and people have been very supportive of this separating cyclists. In fact, they were the ones who were demonstrating within their C2 growth cell that they wanted to continue that pattern and have separated cycle paths within their development. So very much in support of this standard of construction and making sure we get the levels of service right. So then we, you know, to that question of will the public look at it and say, gosh, it's not all connected up yet, and we've adopted a high standard. Certainly, I think Kiwis around the country are travelling. They're a lot of cycling enthusiasts, you know, taking their bicycles with them where they go, and they're enjoying the cycleways that are built in other cities and the recreational paths and everything. So people are pretty quickly getting the idea that if you do it right, you do it well, it is a major asset for the town and a major benefit and a safety improvement. So I think, yes, as the chairman mentioned, there is always a little bit of awe when we roll out these projects, and that's simply because, you know, for a long time people have expected any major roading project to be an expressway or a wider road or more parking or a bigger set of traffic signals or roundabout or something like that, and so they're not used to seeing investment in walking and cycling. So we've got the opportunity and the promotion of the project, you know, through our comms team. The consultation that will go out around the urban mobility business case soon really gives the public the opportunity to look at a new vision. So I'm pretty confident that we'll tick the boxes. We'll not just tick the boxes, but take the public along with us on this.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to call the discussion to a halt. We've had a really good go. So on page 35, we have a recommendation A and B. We've heard all the discussion. We've had some very, very good explanations. I intend to put A and B together. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Oh gosh, yes. Thank Thank you. Who's going to? Yeah, Andrew had his hand up. Sorry, Andrew had his hand up, and Liz. Thank you. My apologies. I'm working through things here. Okay. Tab 8 is road closure, and with us we have Julie. Julie, welcome. Apologies for the delay, but we had to have that discussion. So the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got 4 event road closures coming up in the next month. So we wanted to pop those through today. The first is the Waipa Fun Run, which you've got a report, if we can take that as read.
Thank you. Liz will move. Bruce will second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Autumn Festival. Liz is happy to move. Andrew is happy to second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Mardi Cup Street Parade. I'm happy to move from the chair. Elwyn is seconding. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. And the Head and Stokes Road, that's an oldie. That's been going for nearly 40 years, that one. Out at Horahora, between Mangtauchi Road. Move in a second, please.
Happy to move.
With that one, we hadn't closed the objections by the time the agenda items needed to be in. So I just want to confirm that we did not get any objections for that one.
Oh, thank you, Julie. Lou, you moving and Mike seconding?
Aye.
All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Waste minimisation audit results. Tab 12. And we are welcoming, who are we welcoming? Who? Sally.
I'm here.
Hi, Sally. Thank you.
How's it going, everybody?
Good to see you.
So I know the report that I gave was quite comprehensive, so I'm more here just to answer any questions. If any questions popped up in reading the report on our audit results, you'd seen a little bit of it around the food waste discussion, but this was the more complete version. So just happy to answer any questions.
Oh, I just want to compliment you on the amazing amount of work you've done on it. It's huge.
Oh, thank you.
But you're a passionate person on this, so good on you. I've got Marcus wanting to ask a question.
So yeah, excellent report, Sally. And it just shows that, you know, 33% of food is our largest waste category. So are we actively looking at how to do like composting service and like how Hamilton service is going, and you know what we can do about this?
Yeah, so we did talk about that late last year, and we're kind of hopefully waiting on the bit of surplus funding that Gary's identified for us, and that would take us on our first steps into looking at a food waste service. And just knowing the numbers, like I always prioritise those projects quite strongly through my funding and stuff as well. But yeah, I'm really keen to hopefully get that bit of funding so we can start researching our community, find out what they're doing right now, what barriers they would have and what they think, you know, start to move that project forward, but just kind of waiting on that funding at this stage.
Through the chair.
Mike.
Yeah, just yeah, a lot of data, like Graham said. Just one of the concerns I have is that 77% of people are still using the yellow rubbish bags, which in effect are plastic, which I guess the government are really trying to push to get rid of plastic bags like that. Is there anything we can do to help promote or get the providers to promote the wheelie bin options, which are fairly low, you know, low usage rates?
So I guess the thing to consider is that wheelie bins are still made of plastic, and a lot of plastic. They are only made by about 10 to 15% of recycled plastics, because they have to last for 10 or 15 years in the New Zealand conditions. So there's a lot of plastic involved in a wheelie bin. But the key point is that even for the smaller wheelie bin size, their weights of set out are much higher than prepaid bags. Yeah, so like you're getting about I think I'd have to check through the notes, but I think it's about 1.5 times for the smaller bin and 2.5 times for the larger 240, which is the same as our wheelie bin. So the bigger the receptacle, the more they put out. And we did find in the audit as well, wheelie bin users put out a lot more recycling in their rubbish instead of pulling that out. So prepaid bags, I know the bag itself is plastic, but we're kind of dealing with about, you know, a lot more plastics and stuff inside the bag that we could probably make a better impact on reducing with all our other work that we do about reducing our plastic use and refilling and all the different kind of promotions. So I kind of try to focus more on what's inside the bag than the bag itself. But looking out here in Raglan, they've recently worked with a plastics manufacturer who's taking their soft plastics and is making their own bag from 100% recycled plastics. But that is a conversation I could start with EnviroWaste and see what they say. But no doubt, I'm sure it probably adds cost to the manufacturing of the bag. And that's kind of a bit out of our control with the contract, but I can definitely raise, I'm pretty sure they've probably heard of the innovation that's happened with Raglan using recycled bags as their rubbish bags.
Right, hey, and just one more comment on that. And I think there's been a design change in that yellow bag that we purchased from the supermarket or the veggie shop, and that it used to open up a lot wider. It's actually difficult to actually get a black bag or a white bag or something. You know, if your bin doesn't fit that yellow bag, you're basically putting a bag in a bag, which I know is more plastic, but it's actually got a lot more difficult to get a bag into that yellow bag because the mouth seems to be it's been redesigned. Can you comment on that? Am I dreaming?
I have no idea because I don't use that bag. So again, that's an EnviroWaste bag. So I would guess you know, we don't really have much, well, any control over what bag they choose to use, but no doubt they probably redesigned it to try and keep it to the litre size that they pay for, because people tie it to the very edge of the handles to try and get so much in there. But no, I don't know anything else about that, sorry.
Must be used to that skip at Gloria Vale, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Hey, look, I really enjoyed reading your report, actually, and I see, yeah, there's lots of work to be done in this area. I'm just going to go a little bit off track as some of our discussions we had yesterday, but I just kind of want to challenge Council too, looking forward around our parks and reserves. So we have a lot of rubbish bins. We don't recycle particularly well or provide recycling options in our parks and reserves, and I guess I just want to put that challenge out there. What does the direction look like? And I know that's not a question you can answer now, Sally, but it's something that can be looked at within the organisation around what we might be looking to do. I recall when we opened up Waipuki Park, we did not put rubbish bins there for a good reason, and it is a trend that we see around. In fact, Andrew, did you mention golf courses now are not putting out rubbish bins? So I'm just wondering what we might choose to do with our parks and reserves. I'd like to see, you know, some options around that going forward.
Liz, we have had a good look at recycling in public places. So I totally like that idea of maybe not having rubbish bins at all and getting people to take it home, kind of like our discussion yesterday. But unattended recycling bins in public places would be extremely costly and probably would be fully contaminated, as you know. So yeah, we've done a little bit of research into councils that have provided that. But you know, something a little bit different than an event space like yours. But yeah, in public spaces, recycling, it's about quality now, not quantity. So it's like, I'd be more keen to see something like a little sign over the rubbish bin saying, hey, have you got recycling? Take it home and recycle it in the bin you have there, rather than trying to provide, public space recycling. But I don't know if that's what you were talking about.
I guess it is to a certain extent. I'm interested, like, how successful the Waipuki model has been by not putting rubbish bins there in the beginning. So, is that a model that the parks team want to continue to roll out as we go?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know if they've been able to monitor less litter drops, and do people just dump bags there? So I could definitely have that conversation and find out. That'd be really interesting.
Right. Anything else quickly? Claire? Lou, sorry, mate. Go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now we can, yes.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute. I wanted to support Sally very much in what she's doing and with the funding. With the food waste, just to add to that a little bit, the collection in Hamilton, we could look at this quite positively. There's a large number of people who have single occupants to a residence with very little area to compost, and they are people that would struggle normally to get rid of that food waste. And I think that there is a place in our society for this to be developed, perhaps over time. particularly with the elderly and those that have foods that they just cannot keep or do not are able to use and can recycle. So I'm very positive about that, Sally. So good on you. Well done. And thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Hi, Sally. Yeah, I just want to say thanks too for the fantastic work you're doing there. I've got a slightly different question though, but it's to do with food. Like I had a conversation with people who are renting in Tiaramuri, and they said there's nowhere that they can grow their own vegetables on their property, but there doesn't seem to be any allotments or community gardens provided for. Would that be your area that we could perhaps look at making some land available, or having some way that if there are existing community gardens where private people could actually have a little private plot or something? Yeah. Have you looked into that at all?
You're on mute, Sally. No.
We can't hear you, Sally. Can I just say, Claire, though, while Sally's sorting out her issues, there's the community garden in Kiki at the Maori Women's Welfare League that people are more than welcome to volunteer and help out there for that benefits the community, and they can grow their own veggies there as well.
Got one in Leamington run by a couple of community board members, and it's going nicely as well.
Plus the Cambridge Community Gardens as well.
Is there anything in Tiaramuri though? Yeah. Tiaramuri itself. Yeah.
I don't know that.
Not in Tiaramuri itself, but Kiki is pretty close, and they're always looking for volunteers.
Sally, we're not hearing you.
Just as an aside too, with the changes to the tenancy laws, it might be now with minor changes to a property that a tenant is actually able to put in a small garden regardless. That might be worth them checking out, Claire.
I think on page 61 that we just we received the waste minimisation audit report from Sally. Mover in a second, please. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Owen. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Welcome. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Councillors. So this is the report on Free Waters Reform update. I'll take the report as read, but just give you a couple of highlights and then also give you some updates since the report was written. So we intend to produce this report monthly for you, so you're kept well abreast of what's happening. The work streams covered include the Department of Internal Affairs request for information, Tiaramuri, the new water regulator, and the Water Services Bill, and the Society of Local Government, which we're working with on a coordinated project with 10 other councils. So key points to make. The first one is we completed the information for the DIA. Since then, they've been busy compiling it. We did have a week's worth of backwards and forwards with final questions, which have been completed. And the DIA on Friday released a paper asking councils to proactively release the information to the public. So put it on a public, on our website so it can be accessed from the public. And this is to try and avoid multiple Lagoima requests, both to the DIA and to all the councils. So if we make it public at the beginning, then that should reduce the quantum of requests. And so they've provided some guidelines of how to do that. So we'll probably follow through with that. And obviously the information is now being part of one of the considerations of how government form up water reform. And the results will be publicly published to us, well, not publicly, but released to all the councils in June. But most after council have made, government have made some decisions, but we'll actually see what it looks like as a whole and individually from them in June. The next one is the Cabinet Papers outlined. There'll be consultation with councils and iwi in February and March. So again, I'll provide you all this information in emails this afternoon. but the dates for the consultation with councils have been released. The nearest ones for us, so there's a workshop in Auckland on the 13th of March and one in Rotorua on the 26th of March. So I'll send you through the information this afternoon of how you can register to attend those, and urge you to read all the information and attend. There's also 2 webinars. One's on the 23rd of February, and that's an overview of the Maori rights and interests. That's for an hour on the 23rd of February. And then another hour on the 24th of February, which is a waters reform overview and refresher. So if anybody wants a refresher on what's happened to date and why, there'll be an hour webinar on the 24th. All that will be in the information I send out later on.
Martin, you know, with those consultation sessions, although I can't attend the March one in Rotorua, but it said that you shouldn't really attend the Auckland one because it would really focus on water care. What they said is that you should attend one that's relevant for your council. And I thought the Auckland one wouldn't be relevant because it's likely to focus on the water care model or, you know, that sort of scale of things. So I'm a bit perplexed as to what I should do because I'd really like to attend thing, but I can't do the 26th.
Yeah, so there are other dates and other locations that just require more travel that may be more, but my understanding was they would all be similar and not particularly focused on that geographical area, because there's a lot of, because Northland and lots of other people were going to the Auckland one. So
it might be viable then to do the Auckland one, if they're not in lockdown.
Yeah. The next one is not much update on the water services regulator. That's followed by the water bill item number 4. So the water bill is currently, submissions are open and they close on the 3rd of March. And I think David will be presenting a paper following around our submission on the water services bill. So I won't go into too much more detail on that. So other than that, that's open for any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. You mentioned that you're part of a group of councils that are working together, you know, sharing information and looking at the proposals. Have you been talking about what the impacts would be if there is a large-scale water entity that looks after the top half of the North Island, and how that would I suppose play out for like new developments? Like I'm thinking of like our growth cells and that, because I would imagine that any water entity has to have some sort of input into, you know, the structure plans and the infrastructure forward planning and all that sort of thing. And I'm just thinking it's going to be so difficult that if you've got big places in this water entity's sort of purview, like Auckland and Hamilton as well, like how would Waipa ever get any priority? You know, like I can't see how they've had people that would understand the detail and the complexities that we have to face and give us timely advice.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess there's going to be a lot happening in this space, but you're absolutely right. In terms of our consideration of what this reform means, is those are the principles we have to work through in terms of making sure that those things are clear in terms of what that pathway is. But alongside that, we've also got what's happening with the RMA and the proposal that we're going to be working pretty hard, not only on our district-wide spatial plan, but how that fits into a regional spatial plan. And then how do we make sure we've got the right participants in those conversations? So absolutely, it's a key point, but I think there are those other parameters as well that we need to be a part of, but key consideration.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. And I suppose at all of these meetings, Claire, when you start asking questions, the comment comes back, well, that's in the detail, we haven't got to that yet. And I think there's a huge amount of information that we still need before we could actually form an opinion around the table to recommend to our community in terms of asset valuation, what's the likely costs, the resource management issues, And really, there needs to be an economic regulator in the picture as well. That's the role that council plays. This is the engineering standard, I suppose, or the gold standard. How can we afford to do that and act on behalf of our ratepayers in terms of setting, I suppose, assessing what the risks are and what the costs are of and putting just purely an engineering solution forward rather than the economic one as well. So look, I think there's still huge questions to be answered. How do we become shareholders in these companies, or do they take over the assets? Do they pay for the assets? All of these sorts of things are going to be really challenging, I think. And some of the just the issues that you think about, if, for argument's sake, council decided to opt out, and there's still discussion that is going to be an option. If, for argument's sake, and I'm not suggesting that or preempting a decision, but if Waipa decided to opt out, what does that do for the hundreds, probably thousands of other private suppliers within our district? If council opts out with its own public supplies, as we refer to them now, you just consider every farm that supplies more than 2 houses, their own and someone else's, is a supplier. Now, do they have to opt in or opt out? Who's going to manage their supply? and all of these obligations, it's just another level of bureaucracy. And when you ask these questions, oh, we haven't got there yet, that's not minor details. So it's a lot of thinking that's still got to get through into the detail. I think the regulator side of things, in terms of the water standards, is working fine. They'll set the standards, and whatever we decide, we're going to have to comply with them. But it's where the service delivery kicks in, and the cost and the how that's going to actually work across the country. Huge amount of work needs to be done. Just yesterday, we had a chat with the water regulator, and his comments were that he thinks that the work on wastewater and stormwater is going to gear up, and the government's going to try and resolve those in their next term. Obviously, they've got the numbers to make some radical changes. So I expect that a lot of our time is going to be taken up discussing this and trying to get to the bottom of the details. But from a personal point of view, I just keep coming back, is what the impact going to be on our ratepayers. That's who elected us, and that's who we've got to look after.
Thanks, Jim. And I'm just conscious of the fact that the consultation is supposed to start in May. So, yeah.
Kia ora, Graham. Bill Harris here.
Oh, thanks, Bill.
I'm just interested in the hui that's going to be held on the 23rd, and we'll express an interest in phoning into that. The other thing I wondered about is, have we got all of the puna that are being utilised for drinking water tapped into this waters reform communication? And I'm thinking of Pukeatua. I think there's something out there, and are the owners of that land where drinking water is being taken from, are they under the meaning of drinking water supplier? Are they the people that fit that meaning? And that's been it's significant water. That's water of significance. It's been taken. It's often used for blessings as well, because of the clearness of it. So I just wondered how thorough our research was in terms of looking at where drinking water was being supplied from and who might be supplying it. Kia ora.
Yeah, I can't answer many of those questions, but the definition of a water supplier is someone who treats drinking water for further consumption, and it's how they protect that source water, no matter who or where that source water comes from.
If I could add to that, Bill, and I don't know whether it'll help or not, but we've got a legal obligation for our own drinking water supplies that we provide. So I think it's one of these questions of the detail is how all of those people that you're referring to, anybody who, as I say, provides water to more than one house, and that'll be all the suppliers that you're talking about, how are they actually getting the information? But that's not our responsibility. That's the change in government policy. So, you know, I think of maraes, schools, community halls, all of those places are going to have to come up to these standards that are set, and whether they opt in or opt out of a new body is a decision they'll have to make. But there's literally tens of thousands of them throughout the country, and how they're going to get around that in the timeframes they're talking about, I wouldn't have a clue.
It certainly is a big concern for Marae.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a recommendation on page 82 to accept the report from Robin Walker. Robin's on leave, so Martin was delivering. So move and a seconder for that, please. Bruce moves, Jim seconds. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Street lighting maintenance. That's not your division, Martin. Brian, you got a day in the chambers today, mate. Thank you.
So we'll take the report as read, Mr. Chairman. It is simply a matter of we have completed more work under this contract, and there's a description there of that additional work, the LED lighting infill, new intersection lighting, pedestrian crossings, some crash damage, and updating the lights on the Victoria Bridge. So that, along with routine maintenance, has pushed us towards our contract sum. So we must extend that contract sum to continue this contract to the 30th of June. So I'm happy to take any questions that members have.
And a huge amount of safety in that lighting too that I see. Any questions to Brian on that? Okay, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for A and B, Andrew and Elwyn. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Roger, were you waving? No. Okay. We can't hear you.
No, sorry, I was just saying yes to the motion.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, I'm not Billiana today. I'm stepping into the chair on her behalf. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll take the report as read. In simple terms, we've got two resolutions as part of the report today. One is to increase the approved contract sum of $27.19.10 by $418,200.95, up to $8,729,717.95. So that's to take that, and that's pretty much to cover off the final payments on that contract. So we've got enough money to pay the contractor. As you'll see in the report, a lot of that is historical bits and pieces, even stems back as far as some of the contingency that was burnt up during the COVID situation. So it's just to get us through to the end of the contract there. There's also a second, this resolution C in the report, is to move funds from, funds of $655,496 from the Wastewater Reserves Fund into the PR 1806, which is the Tiaramuri Wastewater Treatment Project, to fund not only this, the works that are covered under the contract, but also some other capital upgrade works that have happened outside the contract on the site.
I presume that you're taking the option of doing those while contractors and what have you on site. Is that what you?
Yeah, there has been a fair bit of work done by the contractors inside and outside of the contract, or in conjunction with the contract. while works have been going on out there, water services have taken the opportunity to perform some upgrades and different bits and pieces. So that's why that money's been used.
No, but when is the finalisation of the work out there happening? Do you know that?
Practical completion has been applied for by the contractor. We're just going through some completion documentation at the moment. So work is for all intents and purposes completed, knocking off a few bits and pieces, and then practical completion will be issued later this month, I believe.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, may I just have a point of clarification?
Yes, go.
Oh, thank you. Just to make sure I've got this right, the original contingency was 621k, of which the over expenditure was 229k, which meant that there was 392k left from that contingency, and you're requesting an additional 655, which actually means that the above contract amount is over 1,047,000. Have I got that sum correct? So it's 1,047,000 above the original contract.
So we've got commitments. Sorry, I'm just trying to financial approved contract. So we've two slightly separate issues. So the approved contract sum is for that was for $8,311 thereabouts. That has been exhausted, and so two slightly separate issues. That has been exhausted. The contingency of that included contingency in that approved contract sum, and that's where we need the additional 418 to bring us in on the contract sum side of it. The project breakdown is a little bit more complicated. So we've got PR 1806, which had $4.7 million in it this year. We've spent 4.3 of that to date. We're forecasting, and that is essentially we're forecasting a spend of 1.1 over and above that 4.7 this year on that contract, which brings us in at that 655 additional money available. It's a little bit complicated because the $8.3 million of the approved contract sum of the contract has actually been spread out over multiple years. So some of that money was spent last year, some of it was spent this year. So it's probably not quite as transparent as it could be.
Mm.
Roger, okay with that, or more complicated?
Yeah, it is a bit complicated, isn't it? Just seems like a large amount over what the original budget was, irrespective of how many years it's spread over. Yeah.
I think the extra work is what's created the extra
it is
money, which wasn't budgeted in the first place.
Yeah.
It was just the extra while they were there. So yeah. All right.
Yep.
Okay, so we have on page, what are we doing? What page are we on? 91, we have A, B, and C, a recommendation there. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Claire. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Good to see you.
Cool. Thank you.